I'm Joshua Izzard. I am assistant professor of English, and I'm the director of the MFA program in creative writing.
Where you been, my blue-eyed son? Where have you been, my darling young one?
There are people at the top of any industry who will tell you that they hit walls, they struggled, they had to work and hone their skills, and that's what you have to do in creative writing. So you might have that baseline talent and interest and ability, but that's not going to get you very far without the hard work. And so yes, I do think it's something that can be taught, that frequently is taught. And it's strange that lots of people kind of don't accept that.
Yeah.
Because if you're walking through an art museum, a visual art museum, and you see an art student copying a painting of a master, of a Monet or something like that, you wouldn't question it. You'd say, well, that's how you learn to paint. That's how you learn to do that. But if you heard of a creative writing student copying the style of Hemingway, you might say, well, go be your own writer. But it's analogous. It's the same thing. That's how you learn to write. Just like in the museum, that's how you learn to paint. So it's absolutely something that can be taught and refined, and you see it happening all over the place.
I've stumbled alongside of 12 misty mountains.
In any industry, you see self-taught people. But in almost every industry, you also see them as the outlier, the exception. So you see a self-taught artist, but most artists go to art school. You see self-taught actors. Most actors go to drama school. You see self-taught mathematicians. Most mathematicians get PhDs. So you do see self-taught writers who have never had any formal training, and they certainly make for a great narrative, and that's probably why we think there are more of them than there are. But most writers go to school for creative writing, and most writers do that at the master's level.
It's a hard.
Our master's program is a 2-year low residency program, and what that means is that students don't spend a lot of time on campus. It's a lot of distance learning. So there are a lot of online courses, online workshops, one-on-one meetings with professors, which can be done via Skype or a phone call, something like that. And then there are 3 times when students do meet. They're called the residencies, and there's one at the very beginning, one in the middle, which is in Edinburgh, so that's very nice, and then one just a semester before it ends. So there are a lot of programs like this around the country. It actually goes back to like the 60s, I think, if I remember correctly, and they used to be done via snail mail, and so students would just mail their writing to their professors, and then the professors would mark them up and send them back. So we're a little bit more advanced than that now. We use online discussions for workshops, and students share Google Docs with me, and I mark them up and share them back with them. It's all much quicker and I think far more efficient.
I've walked and I've crawled down 6 crooked highways. I've stepped in the middle of 7 sad forests. Been out in front of a 12 dead oceans. Been 10,000 miles on the mouth of a graveyard. It's a hard rain's gonna fall.
I'm Lauren McClung, and I am a professor at New York University.
And what did you hear, my darling young one?
I was writing as a child. So I wrote as a kid, I wrote poetry, and I also wrote songs, actually. Yeah, and I was a songwriter before I took the path of poetry. And I started writing poetry more seriously, probably here in David Keplinger's creative writing class. And then I was probably like 19 or something, 20, and then I just decided that was the direction. I took English as a minor here. So I studied, like I said, with David Keplinger in poetry. He was probably the professor that was most part of shaping the way that I was learning about poetry. And when I left here, I was not out of school long before I realized I wanted to be back in school, and I couldn't believe I felt that way at the time, but I did. And so I came back here and did an MA, a master's in English, and I was writing every day. I was writing every day, and I realized how important that was for me. That I wanted that at the center of my life. So when I finished my master's, I was teaching at the time both production courses and also teaching expository writing. And I decided that I wanted to keep pursuing poetry, so I attended the creative writing program at New York University and continued my studies that way. And then, yeah, since being done, it's just, what you do in the world. I think community is really important. So I'm a writer who writes in solitude, and I need that. But I also think that the conversations that happen among your colleagues are so important, where your peers can push you in new directions, can find a subject inside of something you said and realize there's a whole lot more to say there, like you need to excavate that, So I think for me, that kind of like community-oriented conversation, that culture is really important. And also, having professors that are, that live that kind of life, that like, where you can see through their own work and their commitment to work and the way that they are always thinking about ideas, the way that you can engage with them and take that into your own path.
So the room full of men whose hammers were bleeding, I saw the white ladder all covered with water, saw 10,000 talkers whose tongues were all broken, I saw guns and sharp swords in the hands of young children. And it's a hard
tenacity. You have to be a pit bull of a writer, and that goes for yourself and holding yourself to high standards and not letting yourself slip up and say, well, I have a cold this week, so I'm not going to write. If I have a cold this week, but I'm going to write, and be that person. So you have to be that way with yourself, but you also have to be that way in the industry. You have to keep submitting. You can't let yourself get beaten back by rejections or somebody not liking what you've done, or a bad review of your story, or a bad review of your book. It all has to roll off you, and you just have to keep moving forward. So, tenacity.
Heard one person laughing, heard many people laughing. The song of a poet who died in the gutter. I met a young man, he was wounded in love. I met another man, he was wounded in hatred. It's a hard